Rodney's comfortable.
Good evening. It's 6:30. I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Finance Committee for Thursday, February 1st, 2024, in the Requoit Meeting Room. First order of business will be the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And if we could have a moment of silence for those who have lost their lives in service to our community. Thank you. Is there anyone here for public comment? Seeing none. First order of business will be, we'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the Finance Committee meeting of Thursday, January 25th, 2024, in open session.
So moved. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion regarding those minutes? Hearing none. Is there any opposition to approving those minutes of Thursday, January 25th, 2024? Hearing none, passed by unanimous consent. Nothing for appointments and hearings. Let's see, nobody from the select board is, no liaison from the school committee. We'll move on to old business. Responses to our questions, Mr. Town Manager.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Evening.
Thank you for coming.
It's always a pleasure being here.
So the first question I had sent to you from the committee was about regarding the unemployment expense.
Yes.
Why it went from 40,000 to 80,000?
Yes. So first and foremost, I want to thank the finance director for her research. But I am prepared to respond to your questions. Relative to the unemployment, fiscal year 25 unemployment budget was increased to 80,000 based on fiscal year 23 expenses that were $71,319.66, well over the 40,000 that we had budgeted for the fiscal year. Because we transfer the funds annually into our unemployment trust fund, we did have funds available to cover the overage. In reviewing the fiscal 2024 expenses, we have paid $31,706.68 through November 23. Our budget for this fiscal year is $40,000, so we are already close to expending those funds. We have seen a decrease in the amount of claims. The last two invoices paid were down significantly, and we are hoping that that trend continues. The current balance in the fund is approximately $96,500. However, we do have $11,000 in claims that we are disputing. Taking that liability into consideration, there is approximately $85,500 available for the excuse me, for the remainder of this fiscal year. The finance director and the director of human resources were in agreement that the fiscal year 25 budget requests could be reduced by 20,000. Well, first of all, let me get into that answer. Do you have any questions?
Made sense to me.
Sounds like a logical reason for the increase to me.
Okay. Question 2 was the temporary interest outside.
Right.
Is for the anticipated interest that will be due on the 8 million band, thank you, for the HVAC Quint fire truck that at least one of your members is familiar with. That was approved in May 2023.
All right. Any questions from anybody else on that?
How much you say was the fire truck?
8 million.
Well, the fire truck wasn't 8 million.
No,
I can't believe
No.
that.
No, no.
no,
That was the total
Yes.
debt exclusion.
Yes, sir.
With several other
yes.
projects included in
Right.
it, including the fire truck.
You are correct.
Eight
That's
million-
the one.
That would be quite a truck if it was 8 million.
Well, yes, it would be, but we're probably getting there.
An $8 million fire truck.
Yeah, no, that was the total.
Okay.
Question 3, the total amount expended for the new town seal, I think was the question. As reported by departments, as I am here this evening, the total is $49,774.
Mr. Collins, what would be some of the things that would have included that 49,000? What were some things that would have been replaced that was scheduled to be replaced maybe, and what maybe wasn't scheduled to be replaced?
I didn't break down what was scheduled versus what was replaced.
That's
But this would be associated with putting up a new sign in
Yep.
front of Town Hall, which was not scheduled, but we did it
Yep.
with the new seal. Obviously, as we're replacing vehicles, we would have put a new seal on a door.
Right.
But what we did was we changed the seal on all of the doors to town vehicles, whether it be the vehicles up here or whether it be the police vehicles or the fire vehicles or any other town vehicles that display the town seal. The other thing that comes to mind would be the patches that are worn by both police and fire. The town seal is within that patch. That's another thing that was replaced. And I'm sure there's some insignia that I'm forgetting, but those are the things that come to mind off the top of my head.
Well, it's a beautiful seal. The town's very proud of it. I just wanted to know the cost of replacing. Thank you very much.
You just received it.
Yeah, thank you.
That include all the stationery and stuff?
Yes, yes, and business cards, but those were not replaced until we ran out.
Yeah,
So there's,
That's smaller stuff.
and that's much smaller stuff, but that was not replaced until we ran out. There were a couple things that were not replaced until they ran out, but some of the more visible things were replaced. I believe, as I sit here right now, and I don't want to say this inaccurately, I believe the only things that have not been taken care of are the signs as you enter the town that say, "Welcome to Mashpee." So those town seals have not been replaced, to my knowledge.
Is there
So-
any estimation of when they will be?
It's just a matter of money.
Just that.
So anyway, those have not been replaced, but you can add that to the total that I just gave you. I just throw that out for clarification.
And did that come out of a special account, or did it just come out of regular operating budget?
Came out of
expenses?
regular operating with each department.
Yep.
And the majority, like I said, were on a schedule to be replaced, except for these signs.
Thank you.
In terms of the wastewater, of the 54 million authorized, there has been $27,377,781.28 expended. And there is $25,652,544.29 encumbered. This leaves a remaining balance of $969,674.43. We have not expended funds from the $12 million appropriation. We have expended the full allocation of the county ARPA funds, which was a total of $657,653.41, in a portion of the local ARPA fund, which was $278,159.24 for alternate 3, as approved by the Select Board. The total local ARPA funds approved for this use was $694,196.59.
So the 54 million, basically for Phase 1, includes the construction of the building and laying of the pipes and things like this at this point?
There were 2 major costs. Obviously, the construction of the plant and the installation of the collection system. GHD is taking care of the engineering of the plant, while EP, or Environmental Partners, did the collection system. Robert B. Auer is responsible for the collection system and the implementation of the system itself. And Waterline, which is the contracted, or they were awarded the contract for the plant, and they're out of, actually, New Hampshire, Seabrook, New Hampshire. So that's where we stand, and then we have our own engineer, consultant that oversees things, in addition to our distinguished new wastewater superintendent, who can elaborate on the questions related to wastewater. We had him here for that purpose, because he can get into more of the technical stuff than I can, for certain. But if you have any general questions regarding anything I just covered, myself and obviously the finance director are here, along with the assistant manager. And
Yeah. The 54 million, that did not include, or maybe it did, I don't know, any grinder pumps that might be needed in the future? And if so, what's the plan with that? How does that working?
no, I don't believe that was included in the 54. But I'll let him answer that.
Yes, we actually just did do a change. The grinder pumps are going to be owned, excuse me, by the town. Reason for that is because then we're eligible for SRF refunds. We weren't before. We were going to purchase them and just drop them off, and it was going to be at our expense, but now we'll be able to have that reimbursed. And then we'll just take care of the operation and maintenance of those pumps.
But no, it wasn't in the original. But
Right. So that's coming forward.
yes.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm sorry, can you introduce yourself to the committee? Just tell us a little bit about you.
I'm Jared Meter. I'm the new wastewater superintendent. Been in the field for approximately 10 years. Kind of hit the ground running in Oak Martha's Vineyard, and then was the interim superintendent there, and then I moved over to Tisbury and became the superintendent there. But since then, we sold our house, moved to the Cape, and I decided to start shopping around instead of a 2-hour commute over and a 2-hour commute back every day.
We shortened his ride.
Definitely shortened my ride by several hours a day. A lot of my work is in planning that I've, in the past, policy writing, and looking at like the nuts and bolts on how to refine operations is really my focus. At Tisbury and in Oak Bluffs, like in Tisbury, I cut my budget 22% the first year just by fine-tuning the operation, finding things smoother, time is money. So,
Do we have an estimated startup date?
yes. Estimated startup date will be January 2025. There was a delay due to supplying some of the components, the major electrical components for the brain of the facility. The supplier just basically lied to us and told us they could meet a deadline, and then it got extended out 5 months. It hasn't stopped construction. They've been very good about finding things that we can do that normally you would wait until after this was installed, then we'll go to the next step. And they're like, okay, well, we can still run the wires and get them popping out, ready to go when the equipment shows up. So they're moving forward with that. Soon, they'll probably start shrinking the crew size because they are getting so far ahead with these other points. They're doing plumbing right now and some of the other electrical work, and soon they'll be installing SCADA.
So it's a 1 year look ahead, yeah.
What is SCADA?
SCADA is basically a remote system that it's the brain of the facility, but allows us to operate it remotely. It collects all of our data for us, run times. It allows us to remotely operate the system if we need to. So if we have an alarm in the middle of the night, we can dial into the system and try to fix it right away. It allows us just to monitor the outlying equipment like pump stations, all in one system.
It's a computer system. Huh?
Yep.
I should add that the supply chain issue was no fault of the contractors that we've had.
Yep. They ordered like they were supposed to, and nothing they can do about it.
And I saw the presentation the other night, but it also looked like it wouldn't be completely completed, phase one, until July 2025.
Correct. You have a startup period.
Right.
So
What does
during-
that look like? Can you explain that a little bit, please?
Yep, so the startup period is you would, open up one of the trains, you would let in a little bit of flow, you ensure that those pieces of equipment are working correctly. You'll run it through different scenarios, try to, stress the system a little bit to see how well it handles. It also gives us a chance to identify, like accidentally, like did we leave a valve closed or open when we built the place, and then we can adjust that. Then as you go on, you do that for about a month, you add more equipment on, bring in more houses, properties, bring in more sewage. And you do that usually between a 3 and a 6 month period. In this case, we're going to do it in 3 months and get the system going. Then they'll be sitting around, not sitting around, but like watching the system for a little while. And then by the time summer comes around, we should be 100% up and going.
And do you foresee any further expense in relation to phase one?
Do not anticipate any more expenses to phase one. I noticed one of the questions you had was about a $12 million that was just brought in, and we just signed the contract. Let's see here, where was that? Excuse me, 12 million. The money has not been spent yet.
Right.
We have not yet bid neither the alternate rebid project nor the grinder pumps procurement project. So those are still, we haven't sent out the contracts for the grinder pumps yet for that 12 million. The other question was about the 7.5 million for that was for phase two design. There was a contract that was just signed for $6,283,300 for that. But we do not anticipate anything additional for phase one.
Okay.
Are we on target for the overall project for dollars?
Yes.
Well, we don't really know the overall cost of the project at this
You're
point.
talking overall the life of the project?
Just until startup.
Just startup? Yeah, right now we're on target.
So phase one looks to be on budget and on target.
Yep.
Okay. But the overall project, what would you, that was a question too, what would be your best guesstimate? What the overall, because a lot of people are asking that question. People
Yes.
want to know what the bottom line of having these phases pulled out over time
But
is
we
going
got
to
to
be.
have, with all due respect, we've got to have a sit-down with GHD, the gentleman to my right, and we've got to make sure that we have the details that you're going to be in need of. I expect that to be fast and furious because of the timeline that we're on and the necessity of informing people and educating people and making sure that they understand what you just asked.
Right.
I know that there's further discussions that need to be held. Unfortunately, we are on a tight timeline, but all I can really say is stay tuned, and we'll be back. But I don't know if you want to elaborate.
Yeah, I mean, I got a guesstimation based off today's dollars. But like we saw in COVID-19, in 1 year period, everything jumped up 30%.
Right.
We're talking a 20-plus year plan that you're going to have emerging technologies that come out that could be cheaper or more expensive. Every year we find out there's new mandates that come out, this new chemical that we have to get rid of, like PFAS or PFOS, and that could greatly alter the trajectory of the target. So it's kind of like you need a crystal ball. I mean, I was joking earlier, and I was ready to come here and say it's going to cost us $100 quadrillion, just because we don't know the crystal ball. There's so many moving factors. There could be an answer given, like this is what it would cost if we built it all today, and we decided just to do it all at once and borrow the money now. But I feel it would be inappropriate.
One thing for certain is we want to make sure that whatever the figures are that are quoted for any phase or any option 9, we want to make sure that the numbers are true and accurate to the best of our knowledge and belief at the time. There are a lot of moving parts and a lot of, pardon the pun, a lot of things that are fluid. So we'll obviously be back. You're going to need detailed explanations, and I'm sure you're going to have a lot of questions. And we'll answer them all to the best of our ability. But for right now, there's a big elephant in the room.
Are we going to be, at the May meeting, will we be asking the town to vote on any amount of money for Phase 2?
Yes. That's why we will be back shortly,
Okay.
because time is running out.
I got more.
I was looking over there.
So I would say that, I appreciate you answering the questions, because I think the taxpayer has the right to know the answers to this question, because I think it's a lot of money
Absolutely.
being spent.
Yep.
It's going to affect the tax bill at some point. And I think this might be a question for Dawn, or maybe Craig, he's not here, but when do you think, when will this, the tax increase, the 54 million, hit our tax rolls? Do you have any guesstimate of that? When will the taxpayer notice that on their tax bill?
Right now, we are estimating probably about 2026 is when we will first start repaying the loan. However, the finance team, when we did our financial projections, we do expect to be able to cover the debt for the 54 million and hopefully a good part of the 12 million through the wastewater stabilization and WIF. And I know WIF is still taxes. It's not that it's not taxes, but at least it's not additional taxes on top of what you're paying. So we're
Right.
hoping that if revenues come in as we've projected and things are on target, that we are able to fund it through those sources.
So on our tax bill right now, there's this part that says WIF,
Yes.
and that's what you're talking about as well.
Correct.
Yes.
And then the wastewater stabilization, the funds that go into that, it's 75% of the short-term rental money that comes
Right.
in. So that, the town voted to direct 75% of all collections immediately into the wastewater stabilization.
And Dawn, about how much is that? Do we know?
Well, that's a tough, we're reviewing that as well. I spoke to the treasurer earlier because I don't know if you remember, but there was a report that came out from the Cape Cod Commission a few years ago when we first started getting into short-term rentals, when they expanded the occupancy tax to include short-term rentals. The estimate at the time was, and they basically were studying the Airbnbs and that kind of information, was about, I think it was 1.1, 1.2 million. So we had expected 75% to go into the wastewater stabilization, and so we were figuring about $950,000. Unfortunately, collections have not been at that 1.2 million. They've been a little bit lower, so we're about $300,000 short from what our projections are. So the treasurer and I spoke, and we are going to sit down, and we don't think there's going to be an issue because of the WIF. We weren't expending all of the WIF, but there may be a little bit of balancing that we have to do and use a little more of the WIF funds and not the wastewater stabilization.
And just to remind you all, as I'm sure you probably do remember, but the CPA was at 3%. Town voted to go to 2%, and then the WIF was the 2% for a total increase of 1. And I forget how many years ago it was.
Probably a couple of years ago, maybe now?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And do you have a projected funding source for Phase 2?
No, we do not.
So at this point, the taxpayer is the
Yeah,
funding source.
look in the mirror.
Yeah, exactly, look in the mirror, right? Okay.
Is there any chance that the state would nullify our $54 million loan? I mean,
Do what?
get rid of it?
Forgiveness.
Forgiveness, yeah, that's
Oh,
the
I'd
word I'm
like
looking
that.
for.
We've had
Thank
some
you, forgiveness.
discovery, we were told there would be forgiveness on these loans and things. Has that come to fruition?
And there has been,
There
yes.
has been, okay.
Yes, and
great.
actually, the ARPA funds that have come to the state, they used some additional funding from that to offset additional forgiveness. So there has been a significant amount.
Okay.
I don't have the figures on me, but yes, there was a significant amount that has been forgiven, which means we do not have to pay that back at all. And it's 0% loan as well, which is helpful with interest rates what they are.
Going forward into Phase 2, do you see betterments being part of that discussion? Thank you, Don.
That's a subject matter that is near and dear to his heart.
And as you get ready to answer that, can you explain, just so people that are watching can understand what betterments are and how that works, please?
Yeah, I'll explain it the way it was explained to me one time in my own hometown when I was getting hit with a betterment, and it scared the crap out of me. It's such a big word. And the way the person explained to me was, yes, it's a tax, but it's a tax with a deadline. And the way they explained to me was, you can raise your taxes, and at the end of the project, when it's all paid off, are your taxes going to really go down? No. We're going to find another way to spend that money, new school, new police station, or whatever it is, where at least with a betterment, that is a tax with a deadline. You can pay it off tomorrow, you can pay it off over 20 years, but at the end, you've paid your portion. And he used the example of the excise tax with me. He says, that was built to Mashpee, and we're still paying excise tax all these years later. And you're right, it just doesn't go away. We find other ways to spend the money. The betterment gives you a deadline. And I do not foresee, or I can't see how we wouldn't have to start talking about betterments for the future.
So betterment then is an additional tax to that homeowner?
Yes.
Yes.
But the
And-
value of that person's home just went up.
Yes, oh, yes, of course, yeah, and that's good too, right? So the Phase 2.9, what they're calling it, 1,400 homes that are likely to get sewered, they'll all be included in that betterment, those 1,400 homes,
If
more
it's-
than likely.
If it's decided to go betterment, yes. And the way I've done it in other communities, and doesn't necessarily have to be the same way everywhere, but there was a 50-50 split. So 50% of the cost of whatever we were building went to the town, because the town does benefit from it, whether it be your water supply, your swim holes, your ponds, your beaches, but the actual users would pay the betterment for the other 50%.
And that does not include the hookup to the house, to the sewer.
Correct, it's only for the infrastructure.
And do you know what's been hooked up right now around town from homes that have hooked up into the line? I imagine they're doing that now.
They haven't started connecting the individual units. They're putting laterals to the property lines.
Right.
Once we give the okay, then people can start getting contractors in there. We're just looking at exploring the option about early hookups, where is it feasible to allow people to hook up? We put a valve in that allows them to still use their septic, so on that first day of operation, we can just open up and transfer people over.
Right.
To alleviate some of the stress of the, got to get it done now when we send it out.
Have you heard an average of what it's being quoted for those contracts? What's going to cost the homeowner that additional cost?
So it'll vary depending on the type of system, whether it be low pressure or gravity, and then the location of the septic. Do they want to go around the property? Some people have already talked about replumbing their home, so the septic, the line will come out of the front of the house. That reduces the distance of line being laid. Between 8 and 10,000.
And what happens to the septic that's there?
What happens is it has to be
Yeah.
abandoned.
And how does that work?
So there's several options. You can crush it in place and fill in the hole.
Right.
You can punch holes in the bottom, lift the cover, fill it full of sand, or completely remove the unit. Somebody's asked questions about turning it into a rain catch basin. Can they do that so they can use that for irrigation? That's a subject that I'm now going to broach with the Board of Health and stuff, but that's been brought up, as well as using the old leaching field as a place to put your gutter spouts to, instead of having it running back into the town roads and then into our rivers and streams.
Is there an additional cost to that, taking care of that septic system in that home? Is that included when they're laying the pipe in, you think?
As far as when to take, like, what, either to
Right.
demolish
When
it.
they
So
crush it, is that
when I-
included in the price to connect, or is that a totally separate thing?
So I talked to, because that's a private contractor decision, I actually talked to a private contractor 2 days ago, and I asked him the quick question. He said that everybody he's talked to and quoted to, it's been also the abandonment of the system.
So the town is putting the new system down the streets, and then the homeowner has to hook to it?
To it, yes,
At the street level,
yes,
okay. And he has to pay for that?
yes,
For that connection? And the abandonment of the old stuff?
yes.
Not a cheap proposition
No.
for anybody.
No, and there is, I'm getting caught up in funding right now, other funding sources that are available for that.
Excellent.
So I'm trying to lay it out. The intent is that when we send out the notices to connect, there'll be a checklist for the homeowner, because I've already had a lot of the, like, what do I do? I've never done this before, and
Right.
most people haven't. And I'll have on that checklist, like, there's where you can find funding sources, these are the approved contractors to the install, and the steps that you need to do, pull permits, inspections here. And so that way people can just go down the line and check the box and not be stressed about what do I need to do next. And we're trying to streamline the inspection process, where the abandonment, which is done by the Board of Health, the plumbing inspector does the house connection, and then I'm supposed to inspect the infrastructure as you're laying it. That's 3 different inspections that could potentially not happen the same day, depending on our schedules. The building department, plumbing inspector will probably most likely just do all the inspections. The person just has to get 1 permit, and then we'll just divvy out the inspection costs in-house. That way the customer doesn't have to stress over doing that or having an open ditch in their front yard for 3 days because somebody couldn't get there. So that should streamline and make it easier.
Does the homeowner have to maintain it forever after that? Or does the town take over the?
So if it's gravity, the gravity system is the homeowner. The low-pressure systems, because the town's taken over operation and maintenance, we would maintain that system. Each low-pressure system has a box in the side of the house that runs the grinder pumps. It also has a Wi-Fi communication system, so if that pump experiences an alarm, it'll give an audible alarm to the homeowner, let them know, hey, something's wrong here. But we'll also get remotely monitored, what we call an auto dialer. Will call us and say, hey, this house here has a high water alarm. And then we would show up and diagnose it, pull the core in the contract that we put together. We're asking whoever the supplier is going to be, they have to, for every 10 pumps, we get an additional core, we call it. So that way, if there is an alarm, we just pop out that old one, drop the new one in there, take the other one back to the shop and repair it. And we'll repair it in-house.
And who pays?
It would be part through the rates. So that's a cost that we would put inside the rates, and we would do the repairs in-house, which saves a lot of money. We used to, where I was at, when I started out in O+, we used to ship them to FR Mahoney. A couple $100 later, plus then you add shipping, we're talking over $1,000 per unit. We started doing the maintenance in-house, and suddenly it became a $25 job just because we had to buy the part. And so we saved a lot of money that way.
But the homeowner takes on the responsibility for that work? has to pay for that work?
No, like I said, it'll be hidden in the rates. So, yeah, we'll hide it in the rates. It'll be an extra
Just-
2%.
Just like the water system?
Yep. Yeah, we want to encourage, if we left it to the homeowner, what I saw in Tisbury was people, when they're getting nickel and dime like that, those alarms will go off because it's a temporary high water because everybody took a shower at once and the washer machine decided to go on at that time and it just overloaded the tank for a second. It sends an alarm. If we were to show up for that and we were to bill them, or if they had private contracts, that could be $125, $200, $300 bill just to show up and say nothing's wrong. So people will stop calling us. And then what happens is when it really does fail and sewer's going down the road, now we've got a real issue. And even though it wasn't the town's problem, people are going to say, oh, sewer overflow, sewer department didn't do their job. So I said, if we're going to, be accused of it, might as well, maintain it.
Right.
And prevent that. I'd rather have people call
Yeah,
for a phantom.
sure.
Could we go back to the switchgear that is delayed?
Yes.
Is there any way that you could pay a premium to get it sooner?
They're in constant negotiations with them. Their hope is to, shrink it. It has been shrunk once already. That's how we got to the 5 months. We can only hope and keep our fingers crossed. I mean, the pressure is being put on, but it's definitely not the water line's fault. It's not GHD's fault. It's the supply chain.
Any additional questions?
Operations. I've asked the question before, and I wonder if you're getting closer to knowing what the operation cost of the plant is going to be per year.
So I know there was an initial guess at 800,000 was the initial operating cost for that first initial budget. We're doing contract ops in the beginning. I think a lot of it's going to come down to the what that contract's going to consist of in duties and their responsibilities. We actually met today to discuss that a little bit, the different forms that can be offered out there. One of them is where they just do everything soup to nuts and then just hand us a big bill. With me being here, it looks like we're just going to be looking at manpower, and that's what we're going to provide the parts. We're going to order the chemicals. We're going to do all that ourselves. So they would just supply the manpower, and if a guy needs a gallon of oil to do an oil change, they would come to my office and I'd order the gallon of oil. I think that's more cost effective because we can control what's coming in and when, as opposed to trying to anticipate for an outside agency and give them a blank check, and then if they don't use it all. So we had that discussion today, and I think we're going down to just manpower operations, and we supply the equipment and materials.
What'd you say it was going to cost?
So they put together original budget of 800,000 was their guess. It's definitely in the ballpark. It's a brand new plant. We're not going to have all the. I ran Tisbury, which was a 20-year-old plant, with $800,000, and that was replacing equipment, expensive equipment throughout the year because of the age of the plant. I don't think we're going to have any of that aged equipment issues, but it's not bad for us, especially at the beginning, because we're going to be going to an enterprise fund. So if we don't spend our budgets, that just goes into our retained earnings, and that's money in the bank for us for bad years.
And how long will it take to get to an enterprise fund with that?
I put together an article I gave to Dawn. We're hopefully going to put it this year in the warrants, and then to start in fiscal year 2025. We just need to get it approved so we can start the process of building it, how we're going to run it, and do it. Instead of doing the work first, then hopefully something done, bad happens.
But there'll probably have to be some supplement from the town in the beginning. Or do you expect all the 400 homes that are being hooked up to pay for the whole thing in the beginning?
So I had 180 users in Tisbury, and it paid for the whole budget. I hate to put it this way, but the wastewater department's going to open debt-free. And how is that possible with $54 million? Well, the $54 million's already been approved to be paid through the taxes. So my operating costs are going to be based off of my users, and that's only the money I need to collect. That money stays in-house. So it's definitely feasible. We're waiting on the rate study. They have a private firm doing that, Abrams Group. Right. That'll determine the rates, but I don't think it's going to be 5 to 8 years to start running on our own. I think it's 1 to 2 years. I think we just got to get the first year out of our way, and
That's the high risk year. It's the high-risk year, it's the first year.
Yeah, that first year, because we don't know. I've never run an MBR. MBR's, I mean, it's not new technology, but being used in big wastewater plants, it's fairly new. It's state-of-the-art, so I'm not sure of all the little, how often do I have to backwash? That would require chemical usage and stuff, and that's where the guessing game's gonna come in.
Sludge, how much sludge you gotta pull?
Sludge, and yes, the sludge, we're not dewatering, so it's gonna go out wet, and that's a big cost. And then with
That's trucked out.
it's trucked out, and then with the regulations coming out and PFAS and everything else, where you can drop it's getting hard. It's getting very difficult. So my solution is we're just going to look at a contract. Before, we used to always contract with wherever it was going to be dropped. I want to do a contract where we're just giving it to the hauler. I don't care where the hauler takes it to, because if you go with like a company like Synagro and they shut down for a month, I got to hold on to sludge for an extra month, and I might not have the capacity, and it gets hairy. So in this case, I don't care where they take it, get it out of here. And, that should keep it pretty level for us.
And is the sludge cost, to remove that, would that be in your operating budget?
Yes.
That'll be there too, okay. And do you have a guesstimate of what it's going to cost to remove the sludge yet?
I do not yet. I don't even want to guess. I mean,
It's a big number.
I can only go with what we used to do on the vineyard, but
Yeah.
you always got to remember the vineyard factor.
Right, right.
And the boat costs and
Not gonna be
everything.
that expensive.
Right,
We're gonna have to
right.
Put it on a boat.
Exactly,
Right.
haul it over, right?
Yeah, so don't necessarily go by those figures, but go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, on the vineyard, it used to cost us close to $300,000 a year. That was 3 trucks a week. Summertime, we could go one just about every day.
Right.
Um,
And that's going off the island,
That
on
was
the
off
boat.
the island.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
so that's
I
a
don't-
high end.
No, we don't have to do that.
I don't think that's necessarily a fair.
Cheaper to go over the bridge, right?
Yes, much cheaper.
estimate, yeah.
Yeah, I think we're going to cut 2/3 maybe off that cost.
And if I understand correctly, every street the sewer is going down, it is mandatory that homeowner connect to the
Yes.
sewer.
Yes,
No outs for that.
no outs for that.
And how long does a person have to connect to the line once the line is operational?
So according to policy that was passed, it's 90 days. That's why I'm looking into, and I think that's going to be a choke point. So I'm looking at trying to see if we can get the early connections. Once Robert Ayara says where the system's done and ready to go, if we can start finding a way to get people early connected. It might not be every property that can do it, but the ones that we can, let's get it in there, and that way it alleviates that number of contractors that are out there. Because I think that's where if we tell everybody, 400 and something people and only 10 guys are doing it,
Right.
that 90 days can get real hard and cause stress, and I don't want people to be stressed. I don't want people to be stressed.
Right. So it might be a little flexibility as you get started and the timing of those connections get made for people, so they
Yes.
don't stress.
Yeah, that's one of those things when we were told 5 months delay, well, you know what, let's do something that can be used in those 5 months. How can we turn that to our advantage? And that's one of the ways we're looking at making an advantage for us.
And if Phase 2.9 is funded the way they hope it's funded, how long would it take to get that operational? A couple years, a year, 3 years?
Probably a couple of years. It's, the good part is when they built Phase 1, I've always, every place I've been when we talk about planning for the future, and we plan for the future, but they actually built the trains into the plant that's here now, which is the major cost of the plant. And when I heard that, I was like, wow, this is amazing. People actually did plan for the future and actually built it in. So it's just going to be a matter of installing the equipment
Right.
as far as those trains go. Laying the pipe,
Takes time.
it takes a little time, but not as much as the plant could take.
Right.
I think they could probably build the whole collection system in a year, year and a half. So it's lift stations, depending on how many we end up with, that could take a little bit longer. That could drag it out because you have to have those motor control centers inside the lift stations. Give it much smaller. They're usually cabinet built, but
Right.
you got generators and things like that you have to consider and what the lag time is in that, or the lead time, excuse me.
How are we handling people who already have sewer treatment plants? Like Mashpee Commons, I think, has their own sewer treatment plant, and I know Southport has their own sewer treatment plant. Are they just going to get bypassed in the system?
So right now, we're not going near those, but I know there's some treatment plants privately owned. They're actually looking at us to try to take them over. There's been conversations about it. We haven't dove into it too much, because there's a lot of factors you got to bring in. What's the age of the plant? What's the condition of the plant? You know, you're going to have to they would have to bring that plant up to a standard. Then what's the benefit to us? You know, because, you know, yeah, we get rate users and they, you know, that would cover the cost of the plant, but there's other, you know, we want more benefit, and that could be, do they have the ability to do recharge? Do they have recharge capabilities? That could be a plus for the town as a whole, because then we can add in more customers. But like I said, we're in the early stages of those conversations.
So let me just ask this. So the plant hopefully is up and operational spring 2025, right? So why wouldn't you wait until it's up and operational, make sure everything's working correctly with the original ones you got set up, before coming back and asking money from the taxpayer
We're
to
not
get that
going to
other
get into
part going?
policy issues, Greg, come on.
I'm curious.
No, but-
Why would you,
but,
why,
we're not
does
gonna
it,
get
does it
into
make sense to
policy
do that?
issues. We're not going to get into policy issues.
I'm just concerned about
Yeah.
the
We're-
taxpayer and the dollars coming out,
And
that's all.
that's a legitimate issue.
Yes.
I'm just saying, we're not going to get it into policy issues, sir.
Got it. Any more questions?
No disrespect.
None taken, thank you.
All right, I think we've addressed all the questions we had submitted previously. That would bring us into, thank you very much for your assistance and your answers. Very
I
helpful.
do have something else regarding this year's budget. We can
Yeah.
talk about that a little bit, get into that?
We'll get
Thank
into new business. And
Thank you.
we'll
Thank you,
open it.
appreciate that, guys, thank you so much.
I just wanted to completely close old business. That brings us into new business, which is reviewing and discussing the department budget request for 2025. So now, open for discussion. Any questions? Greg?
I'm trying not to go first here, my goodness. So how's it going? I guess that's the question.
So there was a preliminary review. There is no question that the requests need to be reduced. There are two components, primarily CIP, which you're a member of. You've seen what we've done and what is pending. Based on that final figure that we anticipate with one pending issue outstanding, we have calculated, bless you.
Thank you.
We have calculated the amount that the bottom line needs to be reduced by. Met today with staff to work on sharpening the pencil and getting those numbers down to avoid a 2.5 override request for May of 2024. I'm confident that we're going to get there, but it's not going to be easy. We're trying to get all of the figures as accurately as possible. I'm in need of finding out what the health costs are going to be. I don't have the figure to necessarily plug in. We've projected 10%. I'm hoping it's going to be less. And I've got sources checking vigorously that are going to let me know as soon as possible. That may give us a little bit more flexibility in terms of the bottom line, if that happens.
Hearing any rumors about it being level like it has been the last couple of years?
If it came in, what was it, 3 years in a row, we were zero?
Zero, yeah.
I'm really going to be excited,
But doubtful.
but I don't anticipate it. I don't see that happening.
Actually did get a little information today on that. So I don't know if you want to share that or not. It's not been voted on yet, so.
Yeah, it's a work in progress. So hopefully the number is no worse than what I've said to you, and assuming it isn't, we're going to have a little bit more flexibility with that bottom line. I didn't feel comfortable adjusting it just yet because we're literally waiting for a couple things to be solidified. What I can also tell you is we've had a preliminary meeting with the school. I'm not prepared to get into those discussions. What I am prepared to do is to say February 12th, I'll present a tentative figure to the select board. And that week, I believe you meet obviously on
15th.
Thursday.
The 15th, yeah.
The 15th, I will be prepared to submit it to the Finance Committee for review and, I assume, questions.
Are all the car rentals under control?
Yeah, I'm not going to go there. But I appreciate you keeping a sense of humor. Right, Jamie?
So in the CIP that we just voted on, and but we have voted on, portion we did vote on, there was a couple things that were some big-ticket items, including the police department renovation, replacement design, and DPW facility design as well, because of the needs there. Can you talk to those a little bit?
Well, in terms of the PD, what we had for a problem that was initially identified was the HVAC system, and we knew that that had to be replaced. The short version is we brought the folks in to conduct that review for the purposes of focusing just on HVAC. And then we discovered that there are some air quality issues that need to be addressed. Additionally, what has also been referenced is we are failing the inspections in the holding cell area of the police department, and the state conducts these inspections on a regular basis. Long story short, it was determined that it would probably be better to change that scope and reauthorize the amount of money that was going to go towards the HVAC to determine what, if anything, we need desperately now. So there was two approaches to it. One was renovations, and one was the more costly, which is the new facility. I was surprised when the folks had the Zoom meeting with myself and the DPW director and a few others, that the figure between the two was not as high as what I would expect it to be. So I just want to make sure that those numbers are validated, and I want to make sure that obviously, if we were to do something drastic like advocate a new facility, that we know it's not consisting of bells and whistles, but it's consisting of mission-critical needs for the purposes of being functional and meeting the operationally efficient items within the department for the next few years. Wouldn't want to build any facility thinking that this is only going to last 5 years, but want to build a facility, if we were to do that, that is going to take care of the needs long-term. But if you take an inspection or a tour of the facility, I think you'll have an eye-opener. It's not in good shape. DPW is in some questionable conditions as well. Those are really, as I sit here today, the only two facilities that I think are in desperate need of significant renovation or replacement. I think everything else, including the building that we're sitting in, are in good shape. That's my opinion. But I'm not an architect, and I'm not an engineer.
Because of the state's inspection of, or whoever it is that inspects the cells, the prison cells, can we still use them or not?
Well, they haven't shut us down, but they've warned us, and I think they want a renovation fast-tracked, and what exactly that means and how much time can we buy is another thing. But I do know that we get into these issues on inspections every single year. And to a certain extent, we've been trying to kick the can down the road because of all of the costs facing the town. But I think this particular can is probably not going to be able to be kicked much further. And as far as the renovation versus the new building, the analogy was used, you don't want to put lipstick on a pig. It's not going to get the job done necessarily.
I took a tour of the police department and the DPW, and I was rather taken aback by both, to be honest with you. So I thought what was interesting about what you asked about the area with the cells, because you're right, the cell issue is a problem. I guess they have an agreement with Sandwich that they're working with something to help out if they need it, and that's kind of helped them with the passing of that, or working with them, I guess.
Yeah, our neighboring towns have been very helpful in times of need, but it's in serious need of attention. To what extent and what is the cost going to be? I think if we are to reauthorize the amount that was initially for the HVAC system, to get into what exactly is it that we need, I think it's, quite frankly, it's money well spent. Because what I wouldn't want to do is spend thousands of dollars for an HVAC system and then turn around and come back and say, oh, by the way, we need a major renovation, or we need a new station house. That's not good planning.
And thus, though I don't want to get into policy, that was thus my question. I think spending in our town has to be balanced, and you do a good job with that. So does your team. But the taxpayer needs balance throughout the whole process, in my opinion. So that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, you're not going to get an argument out of me with that. The only thing that I would say, to supplement that, Greg, is the taxpayers, and I think you folks and the policymakers need to understand that we're not going to be able to fund wastewater on the backs of operations. I said that many years ago.
Yep.
When this process first started. You can't expect the town or the school, and I'll let them speak for themselves, but you can't expect us to reduce there in order to pay for wastewater. It's just not going to work because, again, I'm not going to speak for them, but the school needs to educate. The town needs to provide essential services that the folks have come to expect, and some are absolutely mission critical. Whether it be a firefighter picking you up because of a medical emergency, whether it be a police officer responding at 2 in the morning for a prowler call, or whether it be making sure that your streets are plowed, or whether any essential service is provided in this building. We've got to make sure that the essential services that the people have come to expect are continuing. And anything beyond that, in my humble opinion, we've got to make sure, as you would say, we identify the cost associated with it, and we understand the trickle-down effect in years to come, or in subsequent years to pay it off. But we can't and I'll say it again, we just can't expect us to reduce over here to pay over there. You can't do it
Yeah.
without crippling the town in terms of services.
And I like what,
And I know I said that previously.
You did.
But I just want to reiterate that.
and I like what Jared said about the plant being future-ready. So if there's any new buildings come down the pike, those would probably be planned such that they are future-ready for growth.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And obviously, wherever we can get creative and reduce costs, like we did with DNR,
Yep.
thanks to you folks. No, but we're always going to look at options that are viable. And if it's feasible to look at a unique option, we will do that. It's not like we want to recklessly and irresponsibly spend money.
Any additional questions? All right. Mr. Bohr, do have a question for you. If the town manager is going to present his budget on the 15th, when would you like to present the school's budget?
We cannot be here on the 15th, so
Yep.
anytime you schedule after that, we'll make it work.
Would the 22nd work then, the week after?
Oh, that's school vacation week, that does not.
All right, then we'll shoot for the 29th.
That's fine.
All right, we will plan on hearing your presentation that night.
Okay, we'll write that down.
That'll make things happy, easy, and
Ms. Collins, when will we be hearing from you regarding when do you present to the select board your budget?
February 12th. And that week, that Thursday, which the chair referred to, is the
The
date
15th.
I'll be in here. What is it?
The 15th.
Here, I'll be here.
Yep. Thank you for your time.
I'm sure you'll be at the select board meeting. So you'll see the
I'll see.
numbers. Mr. Chair, if I
Yeah.
could.
Yeah.
I really like when questions are directed to you and you send them to me.
Yep.
Because we can come in here with answers.
Yep.
I'd just like to encourage you to continue that. Because
Absolutely.
it just makes it easier.
Yep.
And it saves you time and us time, because otherwise, we're going to come in here and say, gee, we got to research that. And we'll
Absolutely.
get back to you.
Yep.
So I know you send me emails, and I just would like to continue that.
Absolutely, that is my plan for going forward.
All right.
What's the best way to get a walkthrough in the police station or the DPW?
What you can do is contact Terry Cook from my office, and she will coordinate that through the PD, and we'll give you the date and the time.
Yeah,
But encourage any of you to go over.
Well, they were very helpful,
But, and quite frankly, we'll give you a tour of any facility you want.
including the school.
I can't speak for the school.
Always welcome.
Maybe cafeteria around lunchtime.
Sure.
Anything else? I'm seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you all very
Appreciate
much.
your time. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Don. Thank you too, Wayne. You're welcome.
All right,
Have a good night.
good night.
you too.
All right, anything at all for discussion on the departmental request?
Do you want me to go over some of the things that were, additional things that were approved at the CIP meeting at this time? Do you want to
No.
report on that?
No, we'll wait until we see it, I think.
All right, no problem.
All right. Any additional topics?
Can I ask a
Yes.
And I know I'm not on an agenda,
Yeah.
but I just wanted to ask if you had any questions early on about the school budget. And I do appreciate sort of the chain of command through the town manager, but also it's often helpful to come directly to us if you have school questions. So if you have any, I'd be happy to answer any now. My other request would be that the finance committee of this town, so I believe there's either 11 or 13 towns that are part of Cape Tech. And I have found from my 9 years in my role now, that no one seems to scrutinize that budget the way our budget is scrutinized. Because it's 13 individual FinComs. And so, and I have great respect for their superintendent, but I've watched him present little to no questions. And I really encourage that if we're being asked to potentially cut a good amount, that why is that not something that the FinCom of all the towns, or maybe it's you in your chair role and all your other colleagues in the other towns, really look at that budget as well, because they never are asked to cut. That's just something I would like to encourage
Noted.
all towns to do.
The valid point.
Very duly noted.
And the only other thing I'm gonna say, and I may have heard, is I don't know if you're interested in, it appears in the budget that I don't know if you have page 55, and I don't know if I'm allowed to speak about this. Am I allowed to speak about this?
Sure.
Yeah, as far as what's out there so far, yeah.
So I know that
Would you
there's
care to come up to
Come to the
the
table.
mic?
Because it's in the budget, it's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we even talked
Yeah,
about
yeah,
it.
okay. And I'm Patty Ford, superintendent, if I have not met any of you. Ashley Phillips is our director of finance. Just to clarify, so I'm going to, I think, direct you to page 55, as if I have the same thing that you all have of the, our budget in the Munis format.
Or is yours broken up?
How is yours? How is yours?
No, if we've got anything
I don't know.
labeled 55.
Okay.
I would suggest the school budget and look at the administrative salaries.
Yeah, so I think there was a concern, because it looks like, let's just look at me, since I don't need to talk about everybody else. But it appears, if you were looking at what I'm looking at, that I have a 10.8% increase. Do you see that in your papers? Okay. If you were looking at this chart that shows 23 actual and the 24 budget, the numbers are static, or in my case, slightly went down. But you will also notice that in the 24 revised budget, you see an amount of $93,295. When our budget was prepared, which is very much in advance, we have unknowns in our Unit A contract, so there are pockets of anticipated salary increases throughout the budget of FY '24. In comparison, if you recall from the Maytown meeting, on the town side, they had Articles 17 through 24 that contained $1,200,000 of salary increases. So we have the unknowns built in, they do it separately. Anyway, Ashley has a chart that does explain it, but that 90, so if you look at the FY '25, that represents the allocation of monies into various people. I'm just going to share with you my last 5-year increases, just for your perspective. So that chart that Ashley gives you is a little bit, yeah, Ashley will go over it since it's her chart.
So this is very much a snapshot of just some information that we could go over to give you more background on how.
Peace of mind at rate increases that are alarming to you?
Right.
That are not valid with what you're looking at?
So if you look at 23 into 24, look at the first section, you will see that there was no increase to any of these salaries. We had unknowns for all of our contracts except for Unit C. So we held all of the money for each of those obligations in the building base. So system-wide obligations, you can see that there's a $93,000 obligation. That money just has not been spread throughout the FY '24 budget yet, and because this process starts so early, it wasn't done before the October 1st deadline. So as you can see, going into '25, we know what our obligations are, so that number has decreased. So just in this small snapshot here, if you total those columns down, it's about a 4% increase, not the 10 to 12% that you see on each line item. So it was an unknown number, and instead of putting inaccurate information in all of the lines, we kept it as one whole number that we could distribute. With the school committee's approval, we do budget transfers throughout the year, so that will be smooth before the end of the year, so you'll see the actuals when we get to the year end. If we go down to Coombs, you can see the principal and the assistant principal. Those were a non-union position and a Unit A position, again, stagnant from '23 to '24. And as you work your way down, you can see all those stagnant line items in the blue. So also I added in extracurricular stipends. We flatlined those, but then the Unit A contract was finalized, and I was able to put the actual amount in for FY '25. And again, I will be spreading those obligations out throughout where they're supposed to be. That obligation line does not just include that holding of the salary contracts, but it also is our retirement line. So when the known retirements are placed in that line item when the budget is created. If there were knowns during this process, going from '23 to '24, I use those known numbers. So you can see something like the middle school teachers. Those were not flat because there were retirements, there were people moving into different lanes and moving up in steps. I was able to account for all of that, even though I didn't have a percentage increase because the contract was not settled. So there's movement within there. Does that make sense, or do you have any questions on that?
So that darker blue line, those obligations are Unit A, which is all of our teachers. Our budget is roughly about 80 to 81% personnel. And so these represent the increases for Unit B, which happens to be the assistant principals, and then Unit A are all of our teachers, nurses, counselors, and Unit C was the only known amount, so they are not part of the darker blue because they are a year ahead in the cycle of negotiations. Those are paraprofessionals, administrative assistants. And then we have non-union personnel in my office, in our tech department. Who else is in that? Oh, our outreach coordinator's not in the union. So just for your own, I did go back and dig up in my personnel file because I don't have that great of a memory, but my FY '20, we can just focus on myself. FY '20, my increase was 2.5%. In FY '21, it was a 2%. FY '22, it was a 2.25%. FY '23 was a 3%. And for FY '24, it was a 5%, and that was based on the school committee giving me an exemplary rating for the first time and wanting to recognize that. So that just gives you perspective a little bit in terms, instead of saying, wow, she's getting a 12% increase or 10% increase.
We did notice those, and we
That is
did
not- no, I
question
know,
them,
and-
so I'm
and-
glad that you came in and just offered that right up.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, so, yeah. But
There's definitely-
anytime though, like as you continue, because you have a pretty important job, we are more than happy, if you have questions before the 29th when we come to present, we are more than happy to clarify, because it's very easy to clarify. And what we find, or what I find personally, is we look at Excel spreadsheets, and we have our narrative, but the munis is always a little bit more clunky to me. It doesn't give you enough information sometimes. It's just, obviously, just numbers. But we are more than happy to do whatever we can to provide clarity.
So, because I kind of understand this, I want to make sure I understand it. So, you're right, in your line item for superintendent, I hate to pick on you, Patty, sorry.
No, I'm here to be picked on, it's fine. I will publicly
There you
address
go.
these questions.
It still says there's a 10.8% increase.
Correct.
Now, that 10.8%, which, if I understand it correctly, is coming from that somewhere in that 93,000, that was a placeholder for expenditures and things like this coming forward.
Yes.
Is that-
It was a placeholder for unknown contract negotiation settlements. So now they're known, so
Right.
they will be spread throughout those particular subsections.
So for
So-
FY '24,
Right.
that amount does not reflect the 5% that they gave me for
It
this
does
year.
not.
That-
No.
right.
I see that.
Because it's in the 93, right.
That's what she's saying.
Gotcha.
It's part,
Got
her
you.
5%
Right.
increase for 24 is up in that 93,000.
Gotcha.
Yes.
So
Gotcha.
basically,
Yes.
it'd be another 5% in 2025 based on
Well,
that.
you would be looking at that higher number in '24, and then we don't know for sure what '25 will be. Ashley plays with numbers to
Right.
put in for that, but
Right.
it will not be so
makes
alarming to
sense.
you. Yes. And that's
Makes
true
more
with
sense.
all of the ones that you look are static from '23 to '24. You're not looking at the right '24 because of, needs to be reallocated from the '93.
So you're right, it is a little clunky.
Yeah.
It is.
Is there a way to make it less clunky?
Well, it's easier to be less clunky when we're not in negotiations year, but when we're
Right.
in negotiations, which, excuse, because he's got a connection to that, we don't like to disclose what we've budgeted, because that can be,
This is public information.
we try to be a little bit less clear on that.
And
Yes.
we budget almost 18 months ahead of time.
Right.
So when we're doing this, there's, a lot of places that we have to make assumptions on past practice. And so for this year, because all of those units, and we went a little bit longer with some of our units in settling than in previous years, we didn't want to have to come back to the fall town meeting to ask for more funds. It was in conversation with the town manager and the finance director that we should put it in this obligation line, and then we'll smooth it once it comes out. Because the budget's due before October 1st, it's a really quick turnaround once all of our staff are in. So it's really just it's a budget transfer that I'll be doing to smooth all of those accounts, and you'll be able to see the actuals when it's the end of FY '24.
I have a question about the first lines that are under number 15,089 and 15,189. Are any of the people in those lines union members?
These are all non-union.
The
No,
top
that's what-
section
it's
is
the whole-
non-union.
All non-union.
And this is solely a snapshot of our total budget. I just wanted to give you
Yeah, this is just-
high-level
Yeah.
examples. So when you look into the budget document, because it only shows 24 and 25, you don't have that 23 to really show the flat. But these are the different sections by school or department that will be laid out in your budget book.
Okay, but if all those people in our first positions in the first section are non-union, why then is there a $93,000 obligation? I don't understand that.
Because the increases for the fiscal year were not determined at the time when we had to submit the budget.
Okay.
And as a negotiating tool, we kept all the dollars for all of the non-unions in one section. And we did that also for the school building. So all of Unit A, all of Unit B, and all of the other the other staff members were put into the system-wide obligations for their salary increases.
Okay.
The obligation line also includes retirements. So that obligation line isn't 100% what the salary increase is for the next year. It also includes anyone who's retiring or has a retirement incentive that has to be paid out in that fiscal year. Does that clarify a little bit?
Yes,
Okay.
okay, thank you.
And the bulk of those retirement is the sick leave buyback that almost every member has after they have at least been 10 years with the district. That's a percentage, usually I think it's about 33%. And then for Unit A, and actually maybe Unit A only, which is our teachers, maybe Unit B, there's an early retirement incentive if they let us know and they're the right age and they have the right number of years. So that's, incorporated. We do
Okay.
have quite a few retirements in June of '25, which is a very large obligation of what they are owed in addition to, regular salary that year.
So I don't, maybe I'm overlooking it. I don't see the high school principal's salary on here.
Right.
And I understand you're in the process of hiring any high school principal?
So we officially have hired one for July 1.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah.
Good for you.
So going back to it only being a snapshot.
Yeah.
The high school principal salary, and I don't want to speak out of turn, so let me just see if I can find it quickly. It was also flat, but we have an interim right now.
Right.
So I didn't want to use that as kind of the
Got you.
placeholder.
Okay. That's fine, just asking.
Yeah.
We're glad you got a new principal. Congratulations.
We just announced it today to staff, and it's in my communication tomorrow.
Excellent.
We had two great candidates, so.
You don't want to give us a preview?
She's a perfect fit.
There you go.
Any other?
Any other questions?
Thank you for letting us share.
You're welcome.
You didn't have to, and I appreciate it. So
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
I know we haven't presented, and that's normally when we give these binders. Would that be helpful for you to have sooner than later?
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yes.
Sure.
Have those to review sooner than later?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you can see what kind of we look at when we go through
Yep.
it.
Sure.
I will leave them in the town manager's office if that's okay.
Yeah, great.
Much
Thank you so
appreciated.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you. You think I'm gonna go get my heat on?
Yes, I know.
I'm just starting to warm up.
I'm just starting to warm up a little bit.
All right.
You got more candy to hand out?
Any additional topics? Any additional topics? Going twice. Hearing none. All right, our next meeting is scheduled for next Thursday, February 8th, 6:30, and in this room. So, Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we get a motion second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Anyone opposed to adjourning? Hearing none, passed by unanimous consent. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.